Hello and welcome to Business on the Wire. I'm Mithali Mukherjee. Earlier this month, the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced her ambitious NMP plan, or the National Monetisation Pipeline plan. This is riding off on announcements she made around the budget, where she said she planned to monetize certain public assets and use the money raised from there to pump it into fresh infrastructure projects. The aim is for the government to raise as much as 6 lakh crores through the process. And at this point, they've laid out two stipulations. One, the fact that only existing projects, as in up and running projects, will be leased out. And two, the fact that there is no outright sale. This is going to be a rental for 4 years, after which a fresh decision will be taken on whether or not to extend the lease or indeed to end it. However, the move has raised some concerns. Several critical sectors have now been detailed within this NMP, including railways, airports, coal mining. For the opposition as well, a big concern is that this could be giving rise to a private monopoly where only a few entities manage to corner the lion's share of everything that's been put out for rentals. And of course, there are concerns like price increase as well. What are the pros and cons over here, and what might be the outcome as the opposition fears it at this point? Joining me to talk about that is former Finance Minister, Mr. P. Chidambaram. Thank you, Mr. Chidambaram, for joining in and speaking with me. I want to discuss some of the presented pros of the NMP first before we discuss the arguments against. The DIPAM Secretary Tuhin Kanta Pandey made a comment around this particular program, saying after 17 years, the country will actually see privatization since the last time in 2003-2004 in the then NDA government. How do you respond to that view about the form and shape divestment has taken and what the NMP suggests?
That is the usual rubbish where they want to black out all that was done in the 10 years of the UPA. See, privatization is a controversial idea, even today. So when we began privatization, we called it disinvestment. Later on, we started using the word privatization. A number of PSUs were indeed disinvested and eventually privatized. Therefore, I don't think there's any need to present any particular period as a dark period. This is an evolving process. The policy has been evolving. People have to be prepared to accept the idea. And now I think a large proportion of the people accept the idea that disinvestment and privatization are done carefully, if done carefully, is good for the country.
In response to the criticism that has already been placed forth by the party, though, the finance minister responded saying that it was the Congress itself that went down this route of monetizing the Mumbai-Pune expressway in 2008. Again, it was the Congress government that looked at monetizing the New Delhi railway station. Was this part of this evolving process as well, sir?
Yes. Who was the successful bidder in the Mumbai-Pune expressway? So what is the experience of that monetization? Somebody must put out a short paper on the lessons learned of that monetization. I know very little about the Delhi railway station. Now, tell me who is the successful bidder and what are the lessons learned of that privatization or monetization. So once we know the lessons learned, the good and the bad of those two exercises, then we can move forward. But you don't even disclose whether the two have been overall good or overall bad for the economy.
As a concept, though, Mr. Chidambaram, there is a point of view among some economists that generally scarce assets are better managed by private hands rather than public, and the fact that now there is some clarity in terms of infrastructure development. Would you say there is merit to that argument while analyzing the NMP, the National Monetisation Pipeline?
All generalizations are false. You know that. Look at the number of cases which are in the IBC. These are private sector run companies, including infrastructure companies. Companies which either started infrastructure projects or took over infrastructure projects are in the IBC. I don't think there is any general rule, but I agree as a common sense principle based on empirical evidence, the private sector manages infrastructure better than the public sector. That I will say, but doesn't mean all cases in the private sector are a roaring success and all cases in the public sector are a dismal failure. I don't think that at all.
I want to go through some of the specific sectors, Mr. Chidambaram. One being roads, as you pointed out. One gets the sense that some of this already existed, the OMT, the operate, maintain, transfer. We've had the toll, operate, transfer. How is what is being presented at this point different from what already exists for the roads as a specific vertical?
As far as I can see, it's no different. It's the same. You give out on operate, transfer basis for about 30 years or 40 years, allow them to collect a toll, and they pay you, I think, a share of the toll, or they pay an annual fee. I'm not sure about the details. This is an old formula which was successfully implemented in the UPA government.
There's two other sectors that come to mind and perhaps raised eyebrows in terms of the sectors that were introduced, one being telecom and the other power transmission. What is the benefit for a private company to lease assets from telecom in a sector that is, in any case, bleeding at this point and not build physical infrastructure for itself? The same for the power sector. Do you think that there will be a lot of interest that will be garnered in the assets that are being put up for leasing?
So take telecom.
Yeah.
There are only two players in the market today. Now, who will lease or buy or whatever the telecom assets? They're going to give out the fiber and the telecom towers.
Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty certain it has to be one of the two current players or a consortium set up by one of the two current players. The danger is monopoly. I have nothing against the current players, but I'm against a monopoly. Remember, at one point of time, there were 10, 12 players in the telecom sector. Today, it's reduced to 2. Go back to power. Power sector is getting aggregated. I can see from my experience, from my knowledge, there are eventually going to be only 4 or 5 major players in the power sector. In fact, the number is shrinking. Standalone power units are being inorganically taken up by other established players. So the danger is monopoly. There's nothing in this policy which tells us, assures us that they will not monetize an asset if it will create a monopoly or a duopoly.
And that is the primary fear, as you have voiced as well, Mr. Chidambaram, the fact that even if this is opened up to bidding, there is the possibility that there are just 1 or 2 names that we're looking at, because if you look at ports or airports or energy, there are only 1 or 2 players that exist at this point that may actually garner a lion's share of what is up on offer.
That is one of my prime concerns. I've highlighted it,
yeah,
and I've given examples. See, the US is today considering how to rein in, how to contain Google, Amazon, Facebook. South Korea has cracked down on the chaeballs. China is cracking down on the tech companies which have become, quote unquote, too big to be regulated. They are becoming bigger than the state in some areas. We should not travel in a direction where eventually we have to battle these monopolies. And our competition law is pretty weak. The enforcement of our competition law by the Competition Commission has left me very disappointed. So this is one of my prime concerns. The other prime concern is, if the private sector takes an asset, say, for 30, 40, 50 years, what are you building into the model to ensure that the asset they leave behind is nearly as good or nearly as new as the asset they inherited. If they do asset stripping or without asset stripping, allow the asset to depreciate, at the end of 40, 50 years, what will the government get? The finance minister says, we are the owner. The asset will be returned to us. What asset will be returned to you? It will be a completely depreciated asset. Therefore, I'm proposing, and I want the finance minister to respond, the depreciation of that asset must go into a depreciation reserve. And that depreciation reserve must be used by the private sector who takes over the asset to rebuild the asset or keep it ship-shape, so that at the end of 40, 50 years, you get an asset which has a value. Suppose, for example, you lease your house to me for 50 years. You can hold on to this piece of paper that you are the owner. But for 50 years, if I am going to live in that house and I leave behind a completely dilapidated house, what is the asset you get back?
There is another concern, is there not, Mr. Chidambaram, particularly for the end user or the common man, if you will. The fact that a private company takes over a particular asset means that, as you said, they will sweat the asset to get the best out of it. So if it's an airport, there is a possibility that costs go up. There is a possibility that maintenance goes down. We've seen examples of that in the Singapore government, for example, where they had to take the public transport back because upkeep was so shoddy by the private entrepreneur. Is that a concern to your mind? What kind of end impact we're looking at when all these assets are given out? Yeah.
There is a third concern. See, UK tried to privatize its railway system. Eventually, they had to take it back. Because a railway system is a public utility and private sector has little interest in public utilities. And the last interest they serve is the public interest. Therefore, I'm appalled by the idea that the bulk of the railway system will be monetized, so-called monetized. UK, France, Italy, Germany run excellent public sector railway infrastructure. Japan. Why can't we run a public sector railway infrastructure? My third worry is prices will go up. Mark my word, prices will go up. Unless there is effective regulation, prices will go up. And when there's effective regulation, the private sector would say, because you're over-regulating us, we are not able to make profits. Therefore, there is this conflict between price stabilization or price restraint from the public point of view, and then there is the private sector's desire to maximize profits. That is why in most countries, large public utilities which serve the large mass of the people is retained in the public sector.
Mm. Is it your case, sir, that this is a flawed idea to begin with, or that the mechanism and structure that has been laid out seems to have a lot of anomalies with it? I mean, is there a problem with the idea, or is the problem with the execution?
See, every idea can be sold as a good idea. GST was a good idea. In fact, I announced it for the first time in 2005 or 6. But it is a bad implementation, bad design. There's nothing that I have read which tells you what the design is. For example, I heard an interview by former World Bank chief economist, Kaushik Basu. I heard an interview from him. And I read an article by Professor T.T. Ram Mohan of IIM. Both have pointed out, where is the design? In fact, Dr. Kaushik Basu has flagged all the points that I have mentioned to you. And Dr. Ram Mohan and others have flagged the fact that there is no design. Tell us what the design is. All that they have spelt out is, we have 5 or 6 options. Fine. 5 or 6 options are good, but tell us the design of each option or the alternative designs. Without knowing what the design is, what the process will be, how the selection will be made. See, my biggest fear is the motives of this government. The motive of the government has been suspect ever since they started this exercise of cherry-picking airports, seaports, power plants, and giving it away. We know that experience. That experience has not been a good experience for the country, for the economy. So the proof of the pudding is the eating. Your past does not inspire confidence. Why should the future inspire confidence? Unless you spell out how you're going to go about the matter.
That's one side of the argument. So what about the other side, where do the private players have that kind of risk capital at this point in time? Higher government spending means that it will come at the cost of lower private spending. It doesn't seem clear what the financing options are at this point. What kind of response do you expect to see from the private side to an idea like this?
See, the way that individual government key players are talking, it seems to me that all this will be controlled by foreign capital. They are pushing the idea of invite and rate. Now, invite and rate are dominated by foreign capital. Retail domestic investor will be very, very few. And the capital that the retail domestic investor will be able to put in will be very, very small. Bulk of the money will come from foreign sources, pension funds, private equity, investment funds. So bulk of the special purpose vehicles which will pick up these assets will be nominally an Indian company, but will be controlled by foreign capital. Look, your two major private sector banks are practically foreign banks. They are Indian managed, but they are virtually foreign banks. I have no complaint. All I'm saying is beware of the idea that foreign capital will control your infrastructure.
The finance minister has laid out a target as well in terms of what she hopes to raise through this process, and the fact that perhaps it will go towards helping with the deficit. In your note in the Indian Express yesterday, you write, consider the objective of collecting a rent of 1,50,000 crores a year. What is not disclosed is the annual revenue currently yielded by these assets, and the gain or loss to the government will only be the difference of that 1,50,000 crores and the current annual revenue. Are you saying that the kind of targets, the kind of financial targets that have been set out will not be met by this process either?
Even if it is met, it is a minuscule target. Suppose the assets which you privatize, let's assume all the assets you've identified are monetized. Suppose they are already yielding you 1,50,000 crore or 1,60,000 crore. Then what is the great advantage of monetization? Your gain or loss is only the difference. And the finance minister doesn't respond to that. She responds, she says, I'm going to get 1,50,000 crore, but she doesn't answer the question, what are you getting today? You're not getting zero. Some assets may be loss-making, some assets are indeed profit-making. So tell us the number. She won't tell the number. Be that as it may. Look at the other side. 1,50,000 multiplied by 4, 6 lakh crore. For 6 lakh crore, you're going to monetize assets worth how many? 100 lakh crore. They have disclosed the breakup of the 6 lakh crore. They have not disclosed the capital investment made in the assets that have been identified and listed. Suppose the value of the asset that you have listed is 200 lakh crore. What is the point of getting a 6 lakh crore over 4 years and a 200 lakh crore asset? You are getting less than 2 or 3%. So what is the capital that has been locked in? What is the return that you hope to earn? Then the third point, your fiscal deficit for the current year, 21-22, is 5.5 lakh crore. And you're going to make at the maximum 1.5 lakh crore. So how is it going to greatly bolster public investment? What are you going to do with this 1.5 lakh crore? Your fiscal deficit is 5.5 lakh crore. This will 1.5 lakh crore make up part of the deficit, or will it be you will still continue to borrow 5.5 lakh crore and invest as 1.5 lakh crore? There's nothing, there's no clarity about it. And the fourth point, and you say this NMP is co-terminus with the National Infrastructure Pipeline.
Yeah.
We are building too many pipelines now. That is 100 lakh crore. 100 lakh crore on the first year it was announced. It became 110 lakh crore on the 2nd August 15. It became 100 lakh crore on the 3rd August 15. What is 6 lakh crore when you've got a infrastructure pipeline of 100 lakh crore? These numbers don't make any sense at all. You are trying to dazzle the uninformed people by these numbers. And today I saw the 100 lakh crore will kick off in September. September is day after tomorrow. So you're trying to dazzle people. You're trying to befuddle people with these numbers. But if you sit back at a desk and calmly analyze and scrutinize these numbers don't make any sense to me at all. What is the objective? First, let the finance minister and the government spell out the objective. Is it raising revenue? Is it partially filling the fiscal deficit gap? Or is it enhancing infrastructure spending? Please spell out your objectives. Next, tell me the criteria for choice of the asset. Why have these assets been listed? What is the criteria? When we did it, we spelled out criteria up front. And I've said that in my article in the Indian Express yesterday. We had 4 criteria and we stuck to that criteria. So tell us what the criteria are.
Do you believe, though, this will roll out as planned without any debate, as you have indicated again, or do you think this will be up for discussions?
I'm very happy that this government never achieves its target. Because bad ideas should not be completed on the target date. This should be opened up for wide public discussion. There must be consultation with the trade unions. There must be consultation with other stakeholders. There must be consultation among political parties. And there should be a full-fledged discussion in Parliament. Of the last, I'm sure they will never allow a discussion in Parliament. That's why we have to discuss it in the media. And the media, you are an exception, is not getting into the debate. It's still singing Hail to the King and Hail to the Queen. Get into a discussion. Spell out the pros and the cons. And let there be a debate. Where is the debate? Has the finance minister invited any stakeholder to a consultation or a discussion? No. She's unilaterally making announcements bit by bit. And the Niti Aayog chips in, the chief economic advisor chips in. Why don't you call people and discuss it?
Yes, indeed. And job loss, I think, is another issue we didn't discuss, but remains a patent, red flag.
It's a major issue. It's a major issue.
Yeah.
As far as I know, the document is silent on maintaining the current level of jobs in the public sector assets that will be monetized. And it is also silent, subject to correction. You can correct me or somebody can correct me. It is silent on reservation. There is an equity aspect to monetization, and one has to address the equity and equality issues also.
Fair point, sir. Let me leave with one question then. We are in a week where we're going to be seeing GDP data out for our country. I think it's for the first time that there's a range from single digits to high double digits. How have you read the course so far in the last few months, and how are you feeling about growth tracks generally?
We are talking about the first quarter.
Yeah.
April, May, June. Last year, the first quarter was minus 24.4, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So obviously the first quarter of this year will be positive. But that is what the chief economist of the IMF called it a mechanical growth, a statistical growth. On a minus 24.4%, there will be a positive growth. But what is there to gloat about it? There's nothing to gloat about it. My benchmark has been, and I'll leave you with this answer, my benchmark is, what was the GDP in constant prices in 2019-20. That is the highest GDP we have reached. 2021 was a decline. I understand that. 2021 was a decline, minus 7.3% over the previous year's GDP. 21-22 will we recover the slide and go back and cross the GDP level of 19-20. I doubt it. I don't think we're going to go back to the 19-20 GDP level in 21-22. I'll be happy if we do, but I doubt it. Which means we have to go back to 19-20. We'll have to wait for 22-23. So please remember, there's no V-shaped recovery here. There is a painfully slow recovery. And the painfully slow recovery is being hampered by the slow and inequitable vaccination of the people of India.
And the inequitous economic recovery as well. So much job loss. Thank you, sir. Thank you as always for joining me and discussing this with me.
Thank you. Good day.
To receive instant updates on all videos from The Wire, click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon. Pay to support independent journalism. Click the link in the description and choose the amount you want to pay.